The regular season of professional hockey is the greatest lie in all of sports. It is a grueling 82-game illusion designed to convince us that statistics matter. That talent is the ultimate equalizer, and that the teams who dominate the winter will inevitably conquer the spring. But they do not. The math is a mirage. You can build the fastest roster in history, you can draft generational talents, and you can engineer a tactical system that suffocates the league for 6 straight months. But the moment the calendar turns to the postseason, the ice shrinks, the rules change, the whistles disappear, and the empires that looked invincible suddenly realize they have been building on sand. We are standing at the precipice of the 2026 NHL Playoffs, a landscape littered with broken promises, ticking clocks, and ghosts of catastrophic failures. We have teams that broke historical records this year. We have superstars staring down the terrifying reality of their own closing championship windows. And we have heavyweights who are trapped in an endless, sickening loop of high expectations and devastating collapses. If you think this is just a normal breakdown of playoff brackets or a simple preview of who advances, you are entirely mistaken. This story is not going to go the way you think it will. If you want to understand the brutal anatomy of playoff failure and why the best teams in the world are about to crumble, you need to watch this entire video. To understand the chaos that is about to unfold, we have to look back at the era of hope that defined this season. Every team entering these playoffs began with a narrative of absolute perfection. They built expectations so massive that success seemed like a mathematical certainty. Look at the Colorado Avalanche. They came out of the gate this season and made absolute history, becoming only the 4th team ever to record a single regulation loss or fewer in their first 20 games. They looked like gods amongst men. Their game was built on a holy trinity of speed, speed, and more speed, driven by players who pushed the pace to a level that opposing defensive structures simply could not compute. They were unrelenting. Or look at the Vegas Golden Knights, riding a monstrous wave of momentum, going an absurd 17-1 down the stretch after a midseason. Coaching change that brought fire and emotion back to a veteran core. Look at the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that practically owns the offensive zone, dictating the flow of the game with a suffocating puck possession metric that makes them the darling of every advanced analytics chart in the world. And then there is the Edmonton Oilers, armed with the most lethal nuclear weapon in the sport, a power play that defies the laws of physics and spearheaded by 2 of the greatest offensive talents to ever lace up skates. The hope was blinding. The hype was deafening. They had the numbers. They had the highlights. They were promised a bright, shimmering future where they would finally lift the ultimate prize. During the buildup of the regular season, these teams were practically untouchable. The data backed up the dominance. The Colorado Avalanche were burying teams with a 60-minute onslaught of pace. The Dallas Stars spent the year proving they possess arguably the deepest, most lethal forward group on the planet when fully healthy. The Vegas Golden Knights tightened up their rush defense, organizing their assignments and closing off the dangerous situations that had previously exposed their shaky goaltending. Everything looked perfectly aligned. It felt as though these franchises had finally solved the puzzle of roster construction. They had outsmarted the salary cap. They had drafted the perfect players. They were operating on a level of execution that made failure seem mathematically impossible. But then the turning point arrives. It always does. The regular season ends, and the terrifying reality of playoff hockey begins. The open ice vanishes. The transition game, which allowed these high-flying teams to look so brilliant, suddenly dries up. Opponents no longer care about trading chances. They care about survival. And that is when the fatal flaws, the tiny cracks in the foundation that were papered over by sheer talent and regular season blowouts, begin to widen into massive, unfixable chasms. The trajectory shifts. A bad bounce, a missed assignment, a goalie who loses his confidence for a split second. And suddenly, the trajectory of an entire franchise is violently altered. This brings us to the most agonizing part of the sport, the repeating pattern of failure. Success breeds expectation, expectation breeds pressure, and pressure exposes the rot inside the system. Year after year, the script is identical. Let us start with the President's Trophy winners, the Colorado Avalanche. Winning that trophy has devolved from an accomplishment into a psychological curse. All eyes are on them. They are expected to steamroll their way to a parade. Last year, they were eliminated in 7 agonizing games, a brutal defeat that sent them packing way earlier than anyone anticipated. And now, they face the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings might be one of the worst statistical teams in modern history to ever qualify for the postseason. They squeaked in with a -19 goal differential and ranked 30th in the league for regulation wins. 30th. It is an absolute joke that they are here, having padded their stats with a record number of overtime appearances. But playoff hockey has no 3-on-3 gimmicks. It is 5-on-5 war. And suddenly, the Kings' biggest weakness vanishes, and their strength is magnified. They play a rigid, suffocating box-plus-1 defensive structure. They protect the middle of the ice like their lives depend on it. They allow the absolute fewest high-danger shots in the entire league. They force high-flying teams like Colorado to live on the perimeter. Colorado has the speed, but they also have a terrifying question mark in net. A tandem of 1A and 1B goaltenders is a ticking time bomb in the playoffs. If neither steps up to steal a game, the Avalanche will fall right back into their historical loop. Dominance, expectation, frustration, and an early exit. If you think this pattern of recurring nightmares is isolated to the West, just look at the Carolina Hurricanes. Every single year, they are touted as a cup contender. Every single year, they dominate the possession metrics. And every single year, they fall short in the Eastern Conference Final, usually suffocated by the physical, grinding style of the Florida Panthers. This year, the Panthers are not in their path, but the ghost of that trauma remains. Carolina's strict man-on-man defensive system leaves absolutely zero room to breathe, but it is highly vulnerable to a single mistake. If one defender is beaten on the rush, the entire system collapses like a house of cards, forcing players to vacate their assignments and leaving backdoor options wide open. They now face the Ottawa Senators, a team that has miraculously survived terrible early-season goaltending and crippling off-ice noise. And the ultimate irony? Ottawa plays the exact same shoot-and-retrieve, low-to-high funneling style that Florida used to destroy Carolina in years past. The Hurricanes are staring at a different jersey, but they are fighting the exact same demon. The pattern is cyclical. It is unavoidable. And the worst part of this entire collapse of expectations hasn't even happened yet. The climax of this agonizing cycle takes place in the Pacific. Enter the Edmonton Oilers. This is not just a hockey series. This is an existential crisis. The narrative surrounding Edmonton is suffocating. The clock is aggressively ticking on Connor McDavid's window. His legacy, the sheer weight of his historical greatness, is on the line with every single shot he takes. And the looming terror is the health of Leon Draisaitl. He is cleared to play, but the whisper in the shadows is that he is nowhere near 100%. They are matched up against the Anaheim Ducks, a team that is the absolute definition of run and gun. Neither of these teams can defend to save their lives. Anaheim's young roster flies up the ice, activating their defensemen on the weak side, using delays and speed changes to create beautiful, chaotic offense. It is a gunslinger's duel. But Edmonton's depth is mathematically proven to be weaker than in previous years. Their 5-on-5 defense is highly suspect. They are relying on a nuclear power play to carry them through. But in the playoffs, the referees put their whistles away. You cannot rely on special teams to save you when special teams are taken off the board. If the Oilers' offense dries up, if their shaky goaltending carousel spins out of control again, they will not just lose a series. They will face the catastrophic realization that the greatest player of his generation might be trapped in a system fundamentally incapable of winning a championship. Throw in the fact that Anaheim has a goaltender in Lucas Dostal who has the terrifying capability to turn into an absolute cyborg and steal a series single-handedly, and you have the recipe for the ultimate collapse of expectations. We see this same tension everywhere. The Dallas Stars have reached the conference finals year after year, only to be crushed at the finish line. Now they face a Minnesota Wild team that weaponized their transition game by acquiring Quinn Hughes, the best puck-moving defenseman in the world, who can completely dismantle Dallas's aggressive forecheck with a single stretch pass. In the East, the Boston Bruins, playing a passive 1-2-2 trap, are praying their goaltender Jeremy Swayman can steal a series against a Buffalo. Sabres team that hasn't seen the playoffs in 15 years but plays a symphonic, rotating offensive game that is a nightmare to defend. The Tampa Bay Lightning, the former dynasty, have suffered 3 straight humiliating first-round exits. They are desperate to prove they are not dead, but they face a Montreal Canadiens team boasting a massive, skilled top line that plays with the dangerous ignorance of youth. Even the Battle of Pennsylvania, the deeply hateful bloodbath between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, is a clash of ghosts. Sidney Crosby, the aging emperor, is fighting against a Flyers team revitalized by rookies and a newfound, deadly power play. Everyone is fighting their own history. Why does this happen? Why do these massive, hyper-talented organizations repeatedly drive off the same cliff? The anatomy of their failures is rooted in the architecture of their arrogance. These teams fail because their regular season strategies are rigid and inflexible. The Edmonton Oilers fail because you cannot outscore terrible defensive structure and inconsistent goaltending when the game becomes a grinding, physical trench war. The Carolina Hurricanes fail because their strict man-on-man system lacks the fluidity to recover from a single lost one-on-one battle, and their historical lack of a true elite goaltender means they cannot survive the high-danger chances that inevitably leak through. The Dallas Stars struggle because their diamond penalty kill gets caught drifting too high in the zone, leaving them desperately vulnerable to goal-line-to-bumper passes. The Vegas Golden Knights, despite their tactical cleanups, are aging and slow, highly susceptible to being exposed high in the offensive zone by a team with elite counterattack speed like Utah. The failure is never about a lack of effort. It is always a systemic breakdown. It is a failure of leadership to adapt, a failure of strategy to pivot when Plan A is neutralized, and a failure of psychological endurance when the opposing team refuses to play into your hands. This is not just a breakdown of playoff matchups. This is a brutal, unforgiving lesson in the reality of high-stakes environments. The 2026 NHL Playoffs will not be won by the team with the best statistics, the most impressive regular season streak, or the most dazzling highlight reel. It will be won by the team that understands how to survive its own internal flaws. It will be won by the team that refuses to fall into the trap of repeating its historical mistakes. The coming weeks will be a graveyard of expectations. Legacies will be permanently scarred. Coaches will be fired. Superstars will be forced to look in the mirror and ask themselves if they truly have what it takes to transcend their systemic limitations. If you want to dive deeper into the hidden mechanics of winning and losing, and understand the stories the mainstream media completely ignores, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. What do you think is the real reason these powerhouse teams keep choking when it matters most? Drop your exact theory down in the comments below. And if you think this breakdown was intense, there is another deeply unsettling story about a franchise collapse that will completely change how you view sports economics. You can watch that video right here.